This year, the Beathea family will have an empty seat at their Thanksgiving table. Robert Beathea was murdered 2 years ago in Milwaukee. His sister Jackie emailed us saying they have not heard much from police since her brother died. A heartbreaking situation made even more difficult because the family lives in the Washington, D.C. area. Lighthouse reporter Andrea Albers connected with the family and learned more about their ongoing frustration.
Robbie was the youngest. He was always full of joy.
He was on his own track. He was doing him, and he saw himself as a positive light and energy.
Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's very hard. But he left the mark.
These are the memories of a son, brother, and father lost too soon.
I see Robbie everywhere. I see him everywhere. I see him in how I talk. I see him in my students. I'm a college professor at my alma mater, and I have students who act like him.
But the echoes also surface the family's palpable frustration in the search for Robbie's killer.
I feel like I didn't do enough for him. I wrote an article about it. I published it. I tried reaching out to people in Milwaukee.
I'm curious to hear about your communication with MPD or with any investigators attached to this case. What's that been like?
I have no hope, you know what I mean? And the one thing you don't want to lose is your faith and your hope. You have given me more response than they have.
I don't like shunning and pushing down my brothers in law enforcement, but I have to say, from the moment my son was killed, dealing with the detectives and the police department as a whole has been a poor experience.
Robert traveled to Milwaukee following his son's death, and while at Robbie's house found a bullet that he believes investigators missed.
But when I called them to let them know that there were critical portions of what happened at the scene that were still intact, that I found, which I found amazing, that they had reviewed the scene, and I'm finding stuff. And they told me that they had reviewed it, they found enough evidence, and that they just didn't want to move all of his stuff out of the way or damage anything in case the family wanted his belongings. And my response to them was, the first thing the family wants is to know who harmed our loved one.
The medical examiner ruled Robert Beathea's death a homicide in the early morning hours of October 2nd, 2022. The murder happened at a home here on Cherry Street, and the family says days later, it became the site of a burglary.
It was clear that whoever came back had taken his keys because they went through the back door.
Robert believes the burglary is connected to his son's murder and told me he repeatedly called MPD to flag this, but investigators seemed unaware.
It's crazy to me. For him to even 3 months after the fact say he didn't even know that his house was robbed put me in a complete downer on who was in charge of investigating our loved one's death.
Hundreds of miles away from Milwaukee, this family says they will not stop seeking answers and justice for Robbie. Andrea Albers, TMJ4 News.
Our Lighthouse team looked at the data surrounding the homicide clearance rates in Milwaukee, which is a measure of how often murders are solved. In 2022, the year Robbie was killed, MPD's clearance rate was 57%. There were 215 homicides that year. So far in 2024, 122 homicides have happened in Milwaukee, and Milwaukee police say its current clearance rate has improved to 75%. TMJ4's Lighthouse team is committed to shining a light on local issues and hold leaders accountable. To watch more of their work, you can scan this QR code that you see on your screen right now, or always go to tmj4.com/lighthouse.